I dialed the number with a steady hand, my heart pounding like a war drum. The rage simmered beneath my skin, cold and controlled. When he answered, I didn't waste a breath. Tell her I'm divorcing her. Silence. Heavy breathing. The sound of someone caught in the act with no escape. I didn't wait for a response. I had already made my choice. She tried calling. She sent frantic messages. He even attempted to justify the unjustifiable. But what words could fix this? What excuse could rewrite the betrayal? Every late night, every missing smile, every flimsy excuse. It all made sense now. I had seen this moment coming, but never like this, never this brutal, never this final. The party was at a mutual friend's house. She had no idea I'd be there, no clue this would be our last encounter as husband and wife. The music thumped, the laughter rang out, but none of it mattered. I had only one purpose that night. Then I saw them, together, laughing, oblivious. It burned. She was my wife, the woman I had promised forever to. And him? A nobody, a mistake she thought would never catch up to her. But now it had. Time slowed as I approached. Every movement, every smile, it all played out in excruciating detail. But what enraged me most? The absence of guilt in her eyes. Like she had done nothing wrong. Like there wouldn't be consequences. But there would be. Tell her I'm getting a divorce. The words shattered the air. She froze. The laughter vanished, as if it had never been there. Her face drained of color, her lips parted in shock. What? What are you doing here? She stammered. Her voice trembled. But I stayed silent. I wanted her to feel it, the weight of her choices crashing down. His hand still rested on her arm, a touch that once meant nothing but now reeked of guilt. She stepped away, but he stayed, unsure, lost. Wait, let me explain, she pleaded. Explain? Explain what? That she had lied? That she had destroyed our life? That she had chosen him over us? There was nothing left to say. What do you do when the person you trusted most betrays you? When the world you built crumbles before your eyes? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just watched as realization dawned in her eyes. The panic. The desperation. The regret. Please, she whispered, reaching for me. I made a mistake. We can fix this. Fix what? The love that had died? The vows she had shattered? For months I had tormented myself. Where did I go wrong? What was I missing? But standing there, I saw the truth. It wasn't me, and for the first time I felt free. She kept talking, words tumbling over each other, grasping at straws. But it was pointless. She knew it. I knew it. There's nothing to explain, I said, my voice calm. I know everything. Her tears meant nothing. Her words held no weight. She had made her choice, and now I had made mine. I walked away, leaving her behind with her regret, her lies, and her shattered world. But she had no idea. This divorce wouldn't just be the end of our marriage. It was the end of everything she thought she had. Because when you betray someone who once gave you everything, you don't just lose them, you lose everything. John sat at the dinner table staring at Melissa as she quietly ate. He was searching for a trace of the woman he had fallen in love with, but all he found was distance. She was there, physically, yet absent in every other way. It was this invisible absence that unsettled him the most. After dinner, as always, Melissa retired to her room. John remained, lost in thought. He could no longer pretend everything was fine. But what could he do? Facing the truth seemed like a painful, uncertain path. He loved Melissa, but love no longer seemed enough to keep them connected. Had work, the extra hours, driven them apart? Had he ignored the signs for too long? Doubts swirled like a storm. in his mind, leaving him helpless against the inevitable distance growing between them. Across the house, Melissa stared at her reflection in the mirror, her eyes heavy with exhaustion and uncertainty. She knew John was trying, that he still cared, but an invisible barrier stood between them, one she no longer had the strength to cross. Was it she who had changed, or had the world around her shifted? She had once loved John with all her heart, and though she still felt something, that love had dulled, transformed into something different. Maybe it was the weight of expectations, of responsibilities that had piled up over the years. Maybe it was work, consuming more and more of her. Or maybe it was herself, a different woman than the one John had married. She still felt something for him, something deep, but it no longer sparked the way it once had. And when she lay beside him at night, she felt the distance between them stretch into an unbridgeable void. Melissa knew John deserved more, but at the same time she questioned if she was capable of giving it to him anymore. And so, silence filled their home, a silence more deafening than any argument could be. What neither of them realized was that the fate of their relationship was already set in motion, about to change forever. John woke up with a weight heavier than usual pressing against his chest. Something inside him had shifted. Melissa had left before him again, just as she had for the past few weeks, leaving only a vague, distant "see you later" echoing through the empty house. Their routine had become unbearable, a pattern of avoidance rather than connection. He couldn't take it anymore. He needed answers. The silence between them wasn't just uncomfortable. It was unsettling. It wasn't just a phase. It wasn't just work stress. It was something more. Something he couldn't yet name, but was about to be revealed. At work, John struggled to focus, his thoughts pulling him elsewhere. Every vibration of his phone made his heart race, only for it to be another work message, another meaningless meeting reminder. But then he remembered. He had a message waiting for him, one he hadn't yet had the courage to listen to. The detective he had hired had left a voicemail earlier. John hesitated before pressing play, knowing that whatever was on the other side of this message would change his life forever. The detective's voice was clear, firm. "Sir, I have the information you requested. I suggest you look at the images I'm sending as an attachment. Your wife has been taking off work to meet a man at times and places that leave little doubt about the nature of their relationship." John's stomach twisted as he opened the attachments. The photos left no room for denial. Melissa, laughing, touching another man with a familiarity he hadn't seen in months. There was an intimacy between them that cut deeper than he thought. Possible. She was cheating. John felt the ground give way beneath him. He had known something was wrong, but seeing it confirmed, undeniable, was a different kind of pain. His hands shook. His blood pounded in his ears. His mind raced through every moment of the past few months, every late-night excuse, every cold response, every time she had turned away from him. She had made her choice. Without a word, John grabbed his things and left the office, ignoring the calls of his co-workers. On the way home, questions battered his mind. Why had she done this? What did this man have that he didn't? Had he truly been so blind? By the time he reached home, rage had cooled into something sharper, something colder. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, the sound of the clock ticking away in the silence. The betrayal had been laid bare, and now all that remained was the confrontation. That night, Melissa didn't come home at her usual time. But John knew where she was. He had the photos, the patterns. He knew the truth. And so, almost without thinking, he picked up the phone and called her lover. The voice on the other end was surprised. "Hello?" John's voice was steady, unshakable. "Tell her I'm getting a divorce." A long silence followed. He imagined the shock on their faces, Melissa's expression turning pale, her breath catching in her throat. Then John hung up. He didn't need to hear any explanations. He didn't want to. Nothing she could say would undo what she had done. John sat motionless on the couch, waiting. He knew Melissa would come back, desperate, scrambling for a way to fix what was already shattered. And sure enough, the sound of the front door opening echoed through the house. Her footsteps hesitated before approaching. She entered the room, her face pale, her eyes wide with panic. "John, please," she started, her voice weak, pleading. "Listen to me, I can explain." John didn't respond. His gaze was cold, distant. She took a few steps closer, her hands trembling. I made a mistake," she stammered. "I don't know what. I was thinking, but you have to understand I was lost. We were drifting apart. I didn't know how to fix us. But I love you, John. I still love you." Tears streamed down her face, but John remained unmoved. "Love?" He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "You think love justifies this?" "I was confused," she said desperately. "But I want to be with you. I made a mistake. But that doesn't mean we can't fix this." John stood up abruptly, and Melissa flinched. The anger he had kept bottled up finally surfaced. "A mistake?" His voice was sharp, each word cutting through the air. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is saying something you regret in an argument. You made a choice, Melissa. Over and over again, you chose to betray me." Melissa's breathing hitched as her world crumbled around her. And then John reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone. With a deliberate motion, he tossed it onto the coffee table. Melissa stared at it, confused. What is that?" John's voice was steady, final. "That, Melissa, is the evidence. The photos, the meetings. I knew what you were doing. I hired someone to follow you." Her face drained of color as she took a step back. The room was thick with tension, suffocating and inescapable. And in that moment, she realized this wasn't just about betrayal. This was about consequences.